How's it going, my truant people? DrSlaking, the Slacking Doctor, back with our IBL D-League Week 3 game, I believe it? No, Week 4 game. Goodness, time's getting away from me. Yeah, Week 4 game. This week we're going up against Mid Pokemaster and his Kentucky Torracats, I believe is his team name. And this matchup is super tough for us. But before I get into that, I want to shout out Checkmate Ben and Strongfall for helping me build and test as always. This was another incredibly rushed team. Strongfall blew me back in 2 quick mock battles, and then they told me, okay, change like 3 mons, here's some ideas, and I went away and changed a load of stuff. So like, yeah, crazy rush building. But still a very interesting team that we've brought here. Shout out to them. Shout out to Just Kurt for joining my team. And thank you to Joseph Games for recording the battle for me. As ever, all the relevant links will be down in the description. So with all that being said, let's actually jump into this matchup and what I'm so scared of. So I am terrified of the Scissor and the Garchomp that you see on my opponent's screen. There was also a Darmanitan that I feared that might come, but that hasn't come. But everything else that I scared of my opponent that I was scared of, sorry, in my opponent's draft has come. So very intimidating team. So kicking off my team, we have Jiraiya the Greninja back. This week we are rocking, I believe, an Expert Belt set with Ice Beam, Hidden Power Fire, Dark Pulse, and Spikes. Spikes are nice to pressure the things like the Garchomp, to break potential sashes on things, if that's kind of a thing. Also to grind down the Blastoise that looks like his most likely spin option. It's not great if it's Defog Zapdos, admittedly, but at the same time it forces Zapdos to defog, which gives me pivots around it and stuff like that. So there are ways that Spikes can just be very useful. Ice Beam, Fire, Hidden Power Fire, and Dark Pulse hits pretty much the rest of his team pretty nicely. Then we have a Magnet Modest Tapu Koko. Because of his speed tiers, we were able to run Modest this week, and with the Magnet, this Thunder's Thunderbolt just plows through like everything on his team, pretty much, that isn't immune to it. Even the Miltank, if it's a Spadef set, should get 2-hit KO'd by Magnet Modest Thunderbolt. So this thing is just unbelievable, and it kind of bluffs the specs on our part if we haven't revealed that we're not specs before that. It also has Hidden Power Ice, Defog, and U-Turn. Did originally have Taunt, and then I put Defog, and then I put Taunt, and then I put Defog, and I couldn't actually remember which one I had when I sent it off to be genned until I started the battle. I thought it still had Taunt, but actually we were back at Defog, so that will pan out as it panned out, you'll see. I think U-Turn was the final move if I'm remembering correctly. Next up, oh no, Volt Switch, sorry, we had Volt Switch on here rather than U-Turn this week, just because that Magnet boosted Volt Switch is going to do a lot. Then we have a very defensive Heatran. Well, I say very defensive in its moveset. It's basically like pretty fast, very bulky with no attack investment at all, with Magma Storm, Toxic, Taunt, and Stealth Rocks. The idea being that I could trap something like the Miltank, for example, taunt it if it's not running like Earthquake or whatever, and I could taunt and Toxic it. I could Toxic the Umbreon, which hasn't come, which I thought was a pretty likely bring. I could trap that, taunt it, and Toxic it. Basically just a fast taunt option on his bulky things and a trapper. It also checks a Darmanitan that can't just Scarf into Flare Blitz against me, so that helps a lot too. Then we have Neoligo. Neoligo is also got the Stealth Rocks. I think we've got Double Rocks this week. Has T-Spikes on here too, but it is a Choice Scarf set with Power Gem and Dazzling Gleam. Power Gem, as you can see, hits his whole team apart from the Garchomp for at least neutral damage, and the Garchomp gets hit by the Dazzling Gleam. So the idea there being that if we can boost up, we can just go run through this team. This is a special attack boosting Neoligo, so we can hopefully just run through the Scarf in his team. We have to be very careful of the Scissor, which pretty much always revenge kills us with the Bullet Punch. We have quite a lot of defense investment, so we might take some Bullet Punches. It really depends. If he's like Adamant Banded, then we're not living that. We're going down. But yeah, we've also got the Hazard stack on this too. And then we've got the Gastrodon. Again, a very bulky Gastrodon. Dual Stab, Scald, Earth Power, Recover, Toxic. This thing is just supposed to be hard for him to break. Things like the Garchomp, things like the Scissor, things like the Blastoise. They have to run coverage. I'm expecting the Mega Blastoise to be essentially Water Pulse, Hidden Power Grass, Ice Beam, and either Rapid Spin or Aura Sphere. We'll have to see. Maybe he's taking Hidden Power Grass off to run the Aura Sphere to hit the Kira. Maybe he's lost the Ice Beam for the Hidden Power Grass. He's not worried about the Gligar. If he's just going to run Water Pulse for that. There's different coverage options that he can run. But yeah, I think he's going to have some sort of 4-move slot syndrome on this Blastoise a little bit. And then we have the Kieran Black at the end here. And this is a pretty bulky Kieran Black again, I believe. With Fusion Bolt, Ice Beam, Roost, and Hidden Power Fire. we've got quite a lot of defense investment. So after rocks, the only way Scissor kills us with a bullet punch is if he's banded adamant. Otherwise, we'll take a bullet punch from that Scissor and kill him with a hidden power fire. This is also an expert belt set, the same as the Greninja, just basically meaning we can pick up the KOs on the things we need to. With them, I think we're modest. We can still hit the Necrozma on especially defensive side of the Ice Beam, and unless he's a bulky Necrozma, we should be able to 2-hit KO it with Ice Beam potentially. So that's really, really nice. And yeah, with the Miltank Stick Fat, Terra Volt stops that. So Ice Beam, if you look at his team, his only switch-ins really are the Blastoise and the Scissor, which we have Fusion Bolt and Hidden Power Fire for. So Kieran can definitely do some work here. So all that being said, looking at his team, the reason that I'm so intimidated this matchup is the Greninja and the Scissor. So with that, the Scissor and the Garchomp. So with that in mind, I'm going to lead with the Greninja. As I said, I'm going to lead off with Jiraiya, because that way I don't just automatically lose a Mon if he leads with Scissor or Garchomp, especially the Garchomp. If he leads Garchomp, yeah, it might just be rocks, but I'm going to just lose a Mon if he leads it. So I have to lead off with Greninja here, apply instant pressure with the Ice Beam. But he actually leads with the Miltank, and I'm like, okay, this is the most obvious rock lead I've ever seen. It's going to be fairly Spadef and bulky. I'm not going to do too much to it, so let me just get a Spike up. That way, if he is Defog on the Zapdos, I'm going to force him to Defog if he doesn't want Spikes up, and if he is Rapid Spin on the Blastoise, he's going to take some chip. Here I'm going to go for the Dark Pulse, because I don't think he'll stay in. There's not really any reason to, and I thought he might try and get either Blastoise or Zapdos in to get rid of the hazards. So I just went for the Dark Pulse here, as it was a neutral play. It hit both of them neutrally, as he does go into the Zapdos. And I'm like, that's fine. I'm just going to Ice Beam here. It looks like he's in Ice Beam range, so I'm just going to fire off the Ice Beam, and we bring him super, super low with this Ice Beam. We don't actually kill. Now, it's worth me mentioning at this point that this is actually our third time doing this battle. We disconnected twice, and I was ready to throw in the towel. I was ready to be like, yeah, should we just do it on the showdown? But Mid shout out to him, was like, no, give it one more go. And I was like, okay. And we managed to get it done. So huge shout out to him for persevering when I was ready just to throw in the towel and go on showdown. But in all the recreations of this match, Dark Pulse into Ice Beam never killed the Zapdos, so obviously I was misjudging his set, or we just got a good roll on the very first Dark Pulse that I did, I'm not quite sure, but it never killed, so that wasn't a roll, I don't think, if we didn't get it in any 3 times. Unfortunately, we didn't freeze or crit him on any of the times either. And he just goes for the Roost there. If he'd gone for the Discharge, it would have been bad losing my Greninja, but I thought he probably had the Scout. Now he's in a difficult spot, because he's kind of in Ice Beam range. It's not quite sure. He might be worried it's a roll as well. And he might be worried about a freeze and any number of other things, and he probably doesn't want his Zapdos being put that low yet. So with that in mind, here I just go for the Dark Pulse. I'm certain he's not going to stay in, and if I get it wrong, then, you know, I've played too aggressively. But he does go into Blastoise, he takes a Spike chip, and he takes a big Dark Pulse. So I'm like, okay, the aggressive play worked. I knew I was going to have to play aggressive because of that offensive matchup he has against me. And I didn't want him going Scissor. That was a key thing. If he went Scissor on an Ice Beam, it was in a bit of a problem. So I didn't want that to happen. So he goes into the Mega Blastoise, and here I expect him to potentially spin, but I'm just going to go into Slug just to be safe, and maybe get a Toxic off on him. He actually goes for the Aura Sphere on the Greninja, obviously not wanting to take another Dark Pulse, which is fair enough. And we tank it pretty nicely. Slug is a bulky boy. Here I'm going to double out, because I don't want to get clapped with a Hidden Power Grass, I want to scout for it, so I'm going to go into Tapu Koko. We're going to take rocks damage, but the way I see it, he's only going to go for a Rapid Spin or a Hidden Power Grass here. At worst, maybe an Ice Beam, but a Rapid Spin or Hidden Power Grass is going to bounce off Koko, so I'm not too worried. As he goes for the Rapid Spin, I'm like, that's fine. He's got rid of the Spike, which sucks, but I've got my Tapu Koko in against his team, and we're in a really, really good spot. So I'm just going to click the T-Bolt here, because I'm like, yeah, he could go Garchomp, but he's got a fear of Dazzling Gleam or whatever. No, sorry, I go for the Defog, because I don't want the rocks off. He's got his hazards off. I don't want hazards on my side, and I don't want to reveal my set either. So I go for that, and he feels safe with the Miltank, which is exactly what I want. So now I can T-Bolt, because this Miltank will not be expecting to take that much. And he actually reveals to have the Earthquake, when I thought he was just going to Rocks up again. I thought by defogging I would force this Miltank to go for Rocks. He actually reveals the Earthquake and puts me super, super low. And here I'm in a difficult spot, because I'm like, okay, if I T-Bolt, I kill. If I Hidden Power Ice, and he goes into the Garchomp, then I 2-hit KO that. I'm not sure. Do I think that he values the Miltank? How much do I think he values this? And so far, he's been making like relatively safe plays. And I've already got the Miltank pretty low. So I'm like, well, if I Hidden Power Ice this turn and he Earthquakes again, he's still going to be pretty low. I'll lose my Koko, but at the same time, he'll be pretty low. If he goes into Garchomp, I get amazing damage out of it. If he Milk Drinks or whatever, then I find out another bit of his set. So far, I know he's got Rocks and Earthquake. And if he yeah, so I'm either going to keep him low, or I'm going to be able to Volt Switch out the next turn, or I'm going to catch the Garchomp. So I feel like Hidden Power Ice, being aggressive, is worth it. And I go for the Hidden Power Ice, and he actually decides to stay in. And this kind of sucks, because this just does bounce off the Miltank. Obviously, without the Magnet and Terrain Boost, it's not doing nearly as much. Coco isn't actually that strong, especially on the special side. So he gets the Milk Drink off, and I'm like, okay, so Rocks, Milk Drink, Earthquake. Do we think he's got Seismic Toss? Because he wouldn't be able to hit things like the Gligar, which could come in and defog on him. So I'm like, this feels like a weird set to me. Do we think he's got like Ice Punch or something? Either way, I'm just going to Volt out, because this will get huge damage back on the Miltank. Put him really low, which is what I want, so that I can break him later with a Neoligo. I've got to be aware this is a bit of a Spadef wall to my Neoligo. And I go into Tran here, because I don't think he's going to Earthquake. Like, I just don't feel like that's his play. So I'm going to go into Tran. It was a really ballsy play by me, but the reason being is I want to scare him out here. I want to try and make him think, like, why would you go into Miltank on this? So I'm going to try and scare him out. This is one of my Z users. And I'm just trying to play a bit of mind games here. It was very brave, but Oggy, like, I didn't feel like had a great matchup here. I felt like it wasn't that important. The Scissor is important, but I still have other checks to the Scissor and things like the Gastrodon. So I'm like, I can risk this. I can try and be really aggressive. But he doesn't fear the Heatran, so he just goes for Rocks, which is fair enough. It was a bit of an elaborate bluff. But I do manage to get Greninja in, so it's like, okay, that could have gone better, but it could have gone worse. So I'm just going to go for the Spike here. If he goes for damage and tries to put me low, it's not the end of the world. I've seen now his full set. He's Seismic Toss, Earthquake, and Milk Drink, and Rocks. So I'm like, I don't super fear this Miltank, to be honest. I can kind of start chipping it down, get spikes up, things like that. I'm going to go for the Dark Pulse here, hoping that he might go into the Blastoise or the Zapdos again, but he actually just goes for the Seismic Toss. And I'm like, well, I'm getting this Miltank lower and lower, which is always important for my end game with Neoligo. I could still really do with catching that Scissor, but this isn't the worst thing in the world. So I'm pretty happy with how things are going, but I'm actually just going to pivot out here into Slug, because I can get a Toxic off on this thing. I now know that Slug absolutely beats this Miltank 1v1. He doesn't have Heal Bell, he can't do anything with Earthquake and Seismic Toss to really hurt Slug, and I can recover Slug back up to a good range of health, because I want to be able to take on that Garchomp, I want to be able to take on that Mega Blastoise and that Scissor. So I'm like, right, getting Slug back to a good range of health is really, really important here. I've got a little bit of chip off on the Miltank, not a lot, but I have got a Spike down, so he's at maybe 75%, and he's going to come in and take another 12 on the Spike, so I'm like, you know, it's okay, maybe a +1 Neoligo, +2 Neoligo might be able to boost through him, so it's not the end of the world. I'm going to go for a Recover here, and as I say, just get myself to a really good range of health. The Blastoise comes in, takes another Spike damage, which is important. Just chipping this thing down as well to put it in Power Gem range for Neoligo. And he's going to go for the Rapid Spin here. I figured that he would either go for the Rapid Spin or the Hidden Power Grass, and I want to get my Toxic off. If he went for the Hidden Power Grass, that would have sucked, but I would have taken it, and I might have been able to recover up on the Miltank later on with Slug. Knowing that I can always recover on that Miltank pretty safely, it doesn't have Toxic, is really, really nice. So I get the Toxic off on the Mega Blastoise. He takes around a Toxic Chip. Here I'm just going to click Recover. He can go for the HP Grass, but I'm going to still end up at about 75%, I think, after the Recover. He puts me down to about 25%, maybe 20%, but with leftovers in the Recover, I'm going to end up right back around the 70-75% mark, so that's okay. Yeah, I'm going to have to come back in on Rocks, but it's only 6% chip. It's not the worst thing in the world. And he's taking another round of poison damage. Here, I think he has to go for the Hidden Power Grass again. I don't think he can risk going for anything else, because I could just stay in and click Recover again. I think he has to go for the Hidden Power Grass. So now's a great time to get Kieran Black in, because this Hidden Power Grass is going to do absolutely nothing. If he goes for the Aura Sphere, well played, but I don't see that ever happening, because he won't want to let my Gastrodon get back to full health, because it just walls so much of his team at this point. So we get the nice little bit of poison damage off on the Blastoise, and now Kieran's in basically at like 70%, just taking Rocks and a tiny little bit of chip. I can fire off an Ice Beam. It was going to pick up the KO on this Mega Blastoise, and it hits everything else on his team, so it's a pretty free Ice Beam. And here he sends out Rock, Paper, Scissor, and fantastic nickname. And I'm scared. I'm like, okay, but the only way he KOs me is a Banded Bullet Punch. So I'm going to go straight for the Power Fire. If he's not Ockerberry, he dies here, and he dies. And that's a crucial turn. We discussed this after the match, and he says he went for the U-turn, and he was Banded Adamant. So had he Bullet Punch, he would have KO'd me. But he didn't want me just going back into like Gastro, for example, and recovering up for free and completely walling this. He didn't want me going into the Heatran for free, for example, and getting Rocks up or getting a big Fire Blast off against his team. I can completely understand why he made this play. It looks to him like I have pretty safe switches into the Scissor. So why did I make this play? Because if he Banded Bullet Punches me, I still get to do all those things. I get to bring in Heatran for free. I get to bring in Gastro for free. And if he Sword Stance and I hard switch, I'm in a bad spot. Then if he Sword Stance into Superpower on my Heatran, for example, I don't have Fire move on my Heatran, so then I'm a little bit screwed. Or maybe I do. Maybe I do have Flamethrower and it's not Rocks. I can't quite remember. But regardless, I'm in a bad spot. So rather than let him get the free SD, that's why I always think Hidden Power Fire was my better play there. If I lose Kyurem, I lose Kyurem, but there was only one set that KO'd me from there, and that was Banded Adamant, which he was, but it was worth taking that risk for me. In comes the Necrozma, and I'm in a little bit of a difficult spot. I'm going to just Ice Beam and hope that he's not like set up Necrozma Double Dance or something, because that could be really scary. As he goes straight for the Photon Geyser and does a lot, there's no way I can roost this off and 1v1 this thing, but I can keep chipping away at him, right? I can keep Ice Beaming. I don't have any priority on my team this week, but I'm curious to see what his other moves are, and he does here go for the Autotomize, and I'm like, right, he can't Sword Stance, that's the crucial thing. He can't Calm Mind or Sword Stance, he's really, really low. If he has Autotomize and he has Photon Geyser, what are his final two moves? If it's Earthquake and X-Scissor, I might be screwed. This might be game, but I'm pretty sure that Gastrodon will be able to take one and Earth Power him to KO if that is the case. Don't know what his final moves are yet, but I'm thinking it could be something along those lines. I'm like, okay, Gastro, I really don't want to take too much chip on Gastro, but at the same time, it might be my only shot against this thing if I have to. Here I go down to Photon Geyser. It's a play he had to make. He couldn't go for anything else and let me KO him, so here I'm going to bring in Greninja, because he hasn't actually shown the X-Scissor, and I'm thinking there's a good chance he's Moonlight or something. He hasn't got the X-Scissor, as he actually reveals to have the Earth Power rather than the Earthquake, which really surprised me. So he was special Autotomized. I thought he was going to be physical Autotomized, but I'm just going to fire off the Dark Pulse here, and we tank that. So that was really, really nice. I get to keep Gastro at a good range of health, which feels more important for me against the rest of his team than having Greninja at a good range of health. So out comes the Miltank again, and this thing's a bit of a menace, but now all he has left in the back is the Miltank, the Garchomp, and the Zapdos, and if he doesn't have Hidden Power Grass on the Zapdos, all three of those just lose to Gastrodon. So I'm going to Dark Pulse here, I'm going to get as much chip as I can off on the Miltank, and crucially, I'm going to put him in Thunderbolt range from Koko. And I'm going to go right into Koko here. There's no reason for me not to. If he goes into the Garchomp here, I'm going to Hidden Power Ice it. And the most important thing is I'll get to find out if it's Scarf Chomp, and I won't let the Chomp set up. That's why I didn't go into Gastro, for example, here and start Toxic and chipping whatever. I want to keep Gastro as healthy as possible. I want to make sure that when the Garchomp comes in, I found out if he's Scarf or not, because that makes a huge difference for Nihilego in the back and how I'm going to win this game. I'm just going to fire off the T-Bolt. Zappy comes out, understandable play, but with that Magnet, we just blow through that Zapdos. I'm guessing it was Fizz Def Zapdos for the Mega Pinsir, which I fully expected, so I thought we had a good chance of knocking out the Zapdos there. Here I'm going to Hidden Power Ice, because like I say, if he's Scarf, that's fine. I know that way I can go into Gastro and wall him, and I don't want him SDing if I try and pivot, for example. So I'm just going to get the chip off with Hidden Power Ice, as he turns out to not be Scarf. It was actually a Z variant. And I'm going to go out into Lebowski here. Unfortunately, Power Gem looks like a roll to kill, and if he has any bulk, it's a roll in his favor. So I'm really not going to risk it. I'm just going to go for the Dazzling Gleam. If he went into the Miltank, the only way he could really do a lot is if he went into Miltank and then doubled back into this on my Gastro switch. He would have to make some very aggressive doubles and stuff, and there are ways that I can prevent that. So instead, we're able to get the Beast Boost up on Nihilego and leave him with only the Miltank in the back. And at this point, I know guaranteed crits anything he wants to do, that Gastrodon will completely beat him if I bring in Gastro at a good range of health. So with that in mind, I'm going to go into Oggy, because it gives me an extra chance to try and Toxic and Taunt this thing, just to speed the battle up for both of us. But he does go for the Earthquake, which is why I didn't go hard Gastro, because if he'd like crit into crit, maybe he'd had a chance. I don't know, I didn't calc it, I didn't want to risk it. So I'm like, okay, I lose a differential point, but I don't care. I've never been one to really play for differential like that, so I'm just going to get Gastro in here, and like I say, we're at such a good range of health, we get in for free, we can Toxic this first turn, provided we don't miss the Toxic into like double crits or something stupid, I don't know, we should be fine. He goes for the S-Toss, and as you can see, we easily take two of those, and we can get a Toxic off, and this thing is now on a timer. We do land a Toxic, of course, there's absolutely nothing he can do at this point. He doesn't have the heal bell, which is really, really important when we've been scouting this Miltank set. As soon as we saw no heal bell and no toxic, Gastro always 1v1'd this thing, which was incredible. So we found a defensive endgame here. It's unusual this season with all the breakers and sweepers we have. We haven't really had a defensive endgame, but this is the first time we've kind of had that, where we've been able to say, okay, I know that Gastrodon can just wall his last 3 mons, potentially depending on different sets, and we found out enough information to do that. So I just recover up here. And at this point, it's clear that the game's over. So he actually messaged me on Discord at this point saying, just attack and I'll spam rocks until I go down so that we don't waste either of our time. And as it happened, I'd already clicked to attack that turn because I didn't want to waste his time either. There was no point with Nihiligo in the back. He was always going to be at a range of health where even if he crit me 5 times, I could still come in and click Power Gem. So we just see out this game here. GG to my man Mid. This was a really, really fun match. Really tight one at the end. Gastrodon making his debut on the channel. This is the first time I've ever used a Gastrodon. And it came in clutch. It came in really, really clutch this game. We had some crazy plays. Him staying in when I hit him Power Iced with the Coco. Him going for the Bandage U-turn when I stayed in with the Kieran Black. We really got each other with 1 or 2 reads in this game. And I think testament to him, he gave us a fantastic battle. And it was super, super fun. I believe this was his first loss of the season. I probably should have said that at the start of the video, but I believe he was undefeated going into this game. So it's a fantastic feeling for your Bowland Bovines to go 3-1 and to beat one of the, I believe, only 2 undefeated coaches in the league. The other one, I think, is OP Jellison, who's still undefeated, who we play in 2 weeks' time. So that's going to be very, very exciting. Maybe we can end somebody else's streak. Who knows? But yeah, I think that was a pretty solid game, and it feels good to keep on the winning in this league. Going 3-1 feels nice. We've got a little bit of cushion now. With it only being a 10-coach league, only 9 games played, I feel like 5-4, 6-3 is enough to make playoffs. So at 3 wins already, we've got to just target 2 more wins, and that gives us a great chance this season. So I'm very, very optimistic, and I think we've got a great shot at playoffs. Thank you again to everyone that helped me this week. I hope you guys enjoyed this battle. Do be sure to check out Mid's channel and all the other IBL D-League coaches. There's some fantastic people. Mid, I believe, has just hit 100 subscribers, and he's going to be doing some 100 subscriber special stuff, so definitely go check out his channel and show some love. And yeah, that's enough from me, guys. Thank you so much for loafing around with me, and I'll catch you again next time.